Question of the day. What is your favorite game that has a really great board presence? That's right, because today we're talking about Tentacle Town. And so, long story short, I was walking past at Gen Con and I saw this game and I immediately stopped to look at it several times because of how it looks on the table. It's got these tentacles that stick up out of the water and they're cute. Like the art's great for it as far as like the style. And I was like, oh, I got to know about this game. So I got to talking to Dan and the team there and they were telling me about how it works. And so today we're taking a look at Tentacle Town. Also, the question of the day alternately could have been, what's your favorite intro worker placement / action management, resource management game? Let me know in the comments below as we talk about Tentacle Town right now. So this is Tentacle Town set up for a 2-player map. How do we know that? Because certain places on the board are covered. These are places that you can put houses. On your turn, you're going to do a few things, but before we do that, we need to set up a couple things. If you're playing with the opportunity cards, these are certain rule changes that you can do, and there are other actions that you can add up there at the top of the board, just like that. Now you'll start with 3 harpoons, 3 gold, and 10 of your own buildings. What you're going to do is, on your turn, you're going to take and place a villager, right? A person, an inhabitant. Now you can do one of 2 things. You can build a building, which means you take a person and put it out here in one of the 3 districts, 1, 2, or 3. And wherever you put them, you can then put one of your buildings. Now, you could then choose to work overtime, which means you pay a coin to still do one of the actions or the tasks. You could not do that in reverse order. You couldn't do a task and then place a building. You can only pay overtime to do a task. So let's just say we work overtime. We spend one of our coins to do one of the actions associated with the area that we're in. So currently we can hunt tentacles, which there are none out there, or we can butcher our catch, which means we can trade in our food tokens that we get from hunting tentacles in order to get, we can get food tokens based on the buildings that are out there. So currently there's 1 building, we would get a food token, that would be our actions. Then at the end of your turn, you're going to place a tentacle out there and roll per tentacle in that section. So we have 1 out here, we roll 1 dice. This means we destroy a building. You could defend by spending one of your harpoons. There are 3 ways to do this. You can flip it like a coin, see how it lands. You can roll the red dice, or you could use the handy dandy spinner, depending on your style of game or who you're playing with. Kids, obviously, you may want to use the spinner. That means we missed. It means the building is destroyed. No worries. They are basically useful to go back and forth, back and forth. Then it passes to the next person. Now let's take a look at the actions, because that's really the main thing and what you can do. So here, per person you have in this section, you can trade one of these food tokens to get a coin. Here you trade a coin, a rock, or stone I guess, and a food token to get a victory point per house. Now that means you can trade that to get a victory point per house. Now the reason I point that out is this symbol here is different than this symbol here. Per X, do this is different than trade this, do this per X. What matters is you trade this once, 1 set of that, to get victory points per buildings here. This is per worker here, or per person here. You can trade that many, as many as there are, food for coins. Slight difference, but it is noticeable when playing. Over here is you trade 2 stones and a food to get a harpoon per worker. You can do that per worker. This is, you get a stone per house that's out here. And we already talked about these. Now this is different because there are cards up here that you can change out. There's a whole mess of these. Some of them are red backgrounds, which are more player interaction in a negative way. But this is per house, spend a coin to gain a flower. Or excuse me, to gain a victory point. This is spend 2 of those in that to get a coin per house. This is per house, trade 2 to get victory points. So just different little things. Now, one of the other ways you can get victory points is by hunting tentacles. Now, let's just say we've got 4 out here. Let's say we use 3 of our harpoons. Let's just say we toss them in the air. So we got 1 success, 2 failures. Now, you can take 1 off, you get a victory point and a food, and that's how you fight the tentacles off. There are a limited number of tentacles, so even if you do have to place multiple tentacles, which are some of the things that can happen, you can kill a villager, nothing can happen, or another tentacle can be placed. If this happens, basically you're going to, one of the, you move a villager, but if this happens, you take one and place it. You don't roll again, but just know that there's more there. And for each one there, you roll a dice up to 4. If you ever have all of them out and you can't place one from the reserves, you can move one from an adjacent area into there, or from an area into there. That's how you play Tentacle Town. You're going to do that. Here's the in-game condition that can be a little tricky, is that the game ends when all of the villagers have been placed. You say, well, that's no big deal. That's a certain amount of turns, right? Well, here's the thing. You can have a run of 6 turns in a row where all the villagers, or a villager gets placed, and then you can roll these dice. We just lost a villager right there. And that could have happened like this, where we lost 2 villagers or 3 villagers. We could set the turns back 3 turns. Now, it's not usually that big of an issue just based purely on math, but it can be, and it is a random number. So just know that's the thing, is that the end game is set by how many, when those get taken up. And granted, that could change based on the dice that you roll. So no definite way of knowing how long the game will be. It technically could stretch to infinitum, but you can mitigate that yourself by saying, all right, we're done. If there's 1 or 2 left or whatever, but it's rare that that happens, but it can happen is the only tricky issue that we ran into while playing, but and something even Dan and I talked about ahead of time, but it did happen and it can happen. So it's not something that, super painstaking, but just know that it can happen, that the game can stretch based on these dice rolls. But again, with the buildings, you can mitigate those buildings. You can keep racking up points. At the end of the game, you're going to get victory points based on area control. The person with the most buildings in an area scores points based on the people that are there too. So you want to build these places up. So really neat concept. Excellent looking game on the table. This is just adorable. The fact that they stick out of the water like that looks so good because it looks like they're just coming out of the map. I love that. I love the way the game looks. I love the silly lore that you're trying to be the mayor of this town, but that's Tentacle Town. So that's Tentacle Town. First and foremost, I love the way this game looks. I mean, who doesn't love a good cutesy tentacle, right? After all, that's kind of the whole point of the game. But the game looks good on the table. The actions look like the actual individual icons and iconography looks good. The pieces look good. The board looks good. I just like the way this game looks because it is different. It's cutesy art, but not overdone. It's not, because there's a fine line in cute looking art and the kind of art that I just absolutely despise, which is that kind of Steven Universe kind of cute art. This is different. This is more like, it reminds me honestly of the classic Day of the Tentacle type art, where it's that old school cute Lucasfilm zany art. And so I really enjoy that about the way this game looks. So all in all, looks great, has a great board presence. Those tentacles look great. The fact they're all different shaped tentacles, they're not all the exact same one. It really adds to it. Plus they're fun to put on your fingers. But at the end of the day, how does the game play? And that's the most important part of this game. So this is an intro. To me, I would consider this more of an intro worker placement game, mainly because there's the intro mode where you don't play with the extra cards, the extra action cards, but also because the actions are very simple, like in a good way. You do this to get this. You do this and you get this based on however many houses are out there. You get this based on however many people. Those little things are key when teaching this new type of game. Still to this day, I make this comparison a lot. Risk is an area control mass market game that people know. Clue is kind of a deduction game that people know. Monopoly is a movement-based economics game that people know. There is no intro to the worker placement hobby, albeit my favorite style of game. There is no intro game for that. So I'm always on the lookout for games that are intro worker placement games. This one is a good option for that because it's got a great table presence. The actions are very simple. Do this to do this. Okay, I need to set up 2 turns ahead, so let me do this, to do this, to do this. The only thing that might deter people from a more open information thing is the fact that when you hunt the tentacles, you flip a coin, but then at the same time, so do you in Feast for Odin, you flip when you go whale hunting. So I'm just saying, or you roll, I should say. So the idea here is sound. It's a very sound worker placement game with great ideas and mechanics and things like that. It looks good on the table. It's a great intro worker placement game. Plus, I love the options of having the extra different actions out there for when it's time to beef up the game or change up the game a little bit. So, end of the day, fun. Tentacle Town is a fun game. We're going to introduce this to Harper very soon, and I know she's going to have a blast with it as well. So if you have kids, this is a great intro worker placement game to play. When I say intro, that's not pejorative. It's a worker placement game that's great for kids, but also great for those game nights where you're like, hey, we got this new game, it'd be great. Or if you have a bigger gathering and you want people to stop by and see a game, this is a good one to throw on the table. So I'm Bryan Drake here on the Dice Tower. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, etc. at Dice Tower Bryan. Until next time, we'll see you.